Autumn winds sighed across the battlements of Storm's End, tugging at banners the color of old gold and overcast thunder. Beneath those restless standards, a boy of scarcely 5 winters stood silent beside the massive stone drum tower, one small hand resting on the glossy black neck of a destrier far too large for him. The horse snorted, steaming in the chill, yet the child did not flinch. His eyes, summer sky blue, bright and watchful, followed the gulls wheeling over the courtyard as though they, not he, possessed the secret freedom he craved. He wore a tunic of black velvet trimmed in yellow, the crowned stag of House Baratheon stitched large across his chest. He was Gendry Baratheon, firstborn son of King Robert and Lady Cersei, or so the realm had been told these last 2 years. The lie was a crown in itself, heavy and glittering. None dared question the tale proclaimed the day Robert arrived in a storm so wild it nearly sundered the causeway. Cersei, radiant and cunning, had emerged from her wheelhouse with a dark-haired babe swaddled in Baratheon gold. Her green eyes shone with triumph as she pressed the child into Robert's arms before the lords of the Stormlands, swearing the infant was born of their passion in King's Landing and kept hidden to thwart assassins. Robert, blooded from a recent tourney victory and roaring with good wine, had laughed, kissed the babe's brow, and named him his heir in that very courtyard, with only a moment's haunted glance towards Stannis and Renly. Gendry remembered none of that, of course. What he did remember, dimly, were voices in the night, low, hurried, tinged with fear, as wet-nursed arms passed him from one darkened chamber to another. He remembered iron-scented streets and a forge's orange glow flaring against midnight walls, half forgotten as a fever dream. And he remembered the first moment he touched the sea, toddling across the beach at the foot of Storm's End, while the tide murmured secrets older than kings. Those whispers stayed with him each night he lay in the great round keep, lulled by the ancient thunder of the castle's heart. Years unfolding, Gendry's 6th name day dawned on a morning washed silver by rain. Lord Stannis arrived from Dragonstone to oversee his nephew's tutoring, an unspoken reproach to Robert's absence. The king was away again, hunting, whoring, reveling anywhere but with the child he had embraced before half the realm. Stannis inspected Gendry as a blacksmith might a blade, turning him with impatient hands, tapping his shoulders to gauge budding muscle. "You are a Baratheon," he said at last, voice as unyielding as the keep's wet stone. "That means duty, boy. It means standing the line when weaker men bend. Remember it." Gendry nodded, though his eyes drifted past Stannis' square jaw to the surf crashing against the wall. Storm's End's massive seagate, older than the Undull King's. The sea spoke to him more tenderly than his grim uncle ever could. Lord Renly came later that year, bringing laughter and bright silk to the rain-washed halls. He gifted Gendry a stag carved of Myrish glass, its antlers catching torchlight in fiery prisms. Renly stayed only a fortnight. Court summons and politics ever tugged him south, but in that short time he taught the boy how to steal sweets from the kitchens and how to make the guards laugh. Renly's leaving felt like winter's first bite. The glass stag remained on Gendry's bedside table, glittering like frozen sunlight, delicate enough to shatter at the next tremor of war. The forge within. At 7, Gendry discovered the armory. Ser Harbert Selmy, cousin to the famed Kingsguard, found him there, soot-smudged, barefoot, staring into the blazing mouth of a forge while the smiths shouted hurried apologies. Yet the boy's eyes were wide with wonder, not fear. Molten metal sang to him, the roar of bellows echoing the sea's voice. The smith handed Gendry a small hammer, expecting him to tire after a single stroke. Instead, the boy swung until sweat plastered dark curls to his brow, shaping raw iron into the crude likeness of a stag's head. The smith laughed, but Ser Harbert saw something more. The calm focus of a craftsman in miniature. Word reached Stannis. Rather than scold, he assigned Gendry a daily hour in the forge. Let him learn patience and pain. And so the prince's mornings filled with letters and sums alongside Maester Cresswell, while afternoons burned with sparks and anvil song. Nights, he would slip from his chamber and climb the ramparts to watch storms roll across Shipbreaker Bay, lightning illuminating waves that hammered the cliff like a smith's mallet. In wind and flame he found a strange kinship. Both were wild forces, yet bendable if one dared withstand the heat. Kingdom's Shadow. By Gendry's 10th year, whispers of Robert's ill-kept counsels drifted even to Storm's End. The small folk spoke of Lannister gold clogging King's Landing, of debts and intrigues, of a hand dead under suspicious circumstances. Cersei, seldom seen in the Stormlands, ruled the court with velvet-clad claws. Stannis muttered of bastards and bookkeepers, of a seed that should be strong. He wrote letters thick with suspicion, but no replies came. Gendry, unaware of the storm gathering beyond his walls, chased Renly's hounds through dewbright orchards and sparred with squires in the yard. He grew tall, broad-shouldered. His black hair cropped short for the tilt helm he was forbidden to wear until his 12th name day. His mother, his royal mother, writes Maester Cresswell, sent presents each name day. Silken doublets, a golden cloak clasp, a dagger set with jade. They arrived with no letter, no scent of motherly warmth. Stannis burned most in the hearth, leaving only the dagger. Steel at least served a purpose. Yet one gift did slip through Stannis' censure. A beautifully wrought warhammer of cast black iron, its head shaped as a crowned stag. The note in Cersei's hand read simply, "To remind my son of the strength that forged his line." Gendry lifted it with both hands. The balance was perfect. He felt the forge within his blood answer, as though he had awaited this hammer all his short life. Tides of unease. On the edge of his 11th year, ravens brought word of Jon Arryn's death. Maester Cresswell wept softly in the rookery. The old man had served Arryn as a young clerk. Stannis' jaw became stone. He called for his horse before dawn and rode north along the Stormlands roads, leaving Gendry for half a moon. When he returned, the lines about his eyes were carved deeper. He began training the boy at dawn, running the battlements with sand-filled packs, swinging the warhammer at bales of straw armored in chain. "Foes will be heavier," Stannis warned. Gendry endured, though muscles screamed. The forge had taught him that steel is born of pressure and flame. So too with princes, it seemed. He grew stronger, surer, until even Ser Harbert nodded approval. Yet questions simmered hotter than any furnace. Why had Uncle Stannis grown so grim since Lord Arryn's passing? Why did ravens come and go in secret? Stannis writing late by candle flame, burning each scroll once read. Why did the king not visit? Robert's crown was heavy, they said, but never too heavy for a hunt or feast. A royal summons. The answer arrived on a spring dawn when the castle boomed with horns. A royal procession eased across the causeway, banners of lion and stag entwined. Gendry watched from the battlements, heart pounding. He had not seen his father in 3 years. The man who dismounted beside the gate was broader than Gendry remembered. His black beard streaked with gray, tunic straining over a belly grown soft. Yet his eyes shone with the same reckless warmth. Robert bellowed greetings. Crushing Stannis in a bear hug, the stern lord endured like a spear thrust. Then the king turned and swept Gendry into his arms. "Gods, but you've grown, lad, big as a young bull." He laughed, deep and booming, then froze, seeing the warhammer at Gendry's belt. Silence fell between father and son, broken only by gull cry. Robert lifted the weapon with reverent hands, turning it in the light. "A king's tool," he murmured, "and you hold it straight." Cersei arrived behind him, emerald eyes glinting, golden hair perfectly coiffed. She pressed a perfunctory kiss to Gendry's brow, cold as the sea at winter's height. Behind her stalked Ser Jaime in white cloak, shadows dancing in his green-gold gaze. The twins surveyed Storm's End like conquerors tasting new wine. That night, the great hall filled with lords and minstrels and the smell of boar. Robert drank deep, nostalgia loosening his tongue. He spoke of war, of the dead Prince Rhaegar, of Maya Stone in the Vale, Bara in King's Landing. Names slipping out before Cersei's glare silenced him. Gendry caught fragments, like sparks from the hearth. Bastard, heir, dragon dirt. The words meant little yet lodged in his mind. Later, he sought the smithy's quiet. There, beneath red coals, He hammered out his confusion, sparks leaping like fireflies around him. In the anvil's ring he heard a promise. Steel does not lie. It is true to its making. Seeds of rebellion. Summer ripened. Gendry rode beside his father along the King's Road, Storm's End shrinking to a memory behind green hills. Robert wished him to see the realm he would one day rule. They paused at each holdfast, Robert granting boons, Gendry absorbing faces and fears of small folk. He learned that power was not in banners but in bread, in roads kept safe, in justice swift and fair. Yet he saw too the cracks. Bandits unchecked near Sow's Horn, gold cloaks demanding bribes at village gates, small folk whispering of coffers bled dry by lion debts. At night Robert brooded over the cookfire, wine jug in hand, lamenting how kingship had turned to clay in his grasp. "I should have wed Lyanna," he muttered once. Gendry knew the name from songs. Jealousy pricked him, but pity too, for a father haunted by ghosts. In King's Landing, court glittered brighter than any forged spark, yet smelled of rot. Varys the spider cooed over Gendry's education. Littlefinger measured him with calculating eyes. Joffrey, pale-haired and haughty, mocked Gendry's calloused hands. Only Princess Myrcella offered genuine smiles. Tommen asked shyly about hammers. Gendry answered, patient, hiding how each Lannister smile felt like a trap's sweet scent. Maester Pycelle probed his lineage with subtle questions. Does the boy recall his mother's features? While scribbling furious notes, Gendry answered vaguely, for he truly remembered only shadows. Cersei's ladies whispered about blacksmith's sons and who fathered whom. The air was thick with webs unseen. One dawn, Ser Barristan Selmy found Gendry drilling alone in the courtyard. The old knight watched his hammer forms, nodding. "Strength is nothing without honor, your grace," he said. "Remember that when tempters whisper in your ear." The title, your grace, felt heavy. Gendry swung harder, sparks dancing under sunrise. The Book of Lineages. Days later, Stannis arrived with a heavy tome. The Lineages and Histories of the Great Houses of the Seven Kingdoms, by Grand Maester Mauleon. He set it before Robert in the small council chamber. "Read," he growled. Robert skimmed pages, brow furrowing. Hair, eyes, jawlines, traits repeating through House Baratheon like storm drums. Then he turned to Joffrey's portrait, commissioned last year. Flaxen curls, eyes of wildfire green. Gendry had those same blue eyes as Robert, as Renly, as every Baratheon lord since Orys. Silence clawed the chamber. Cersei rose, grace transmuted to iron. "Are you calling me false, brother bylaw?" Her voice held poison. Stannis said nothing. The book spoke louder. Gendry, hiding in the gallery's shadows, felt the floor tilt. If Joffrey was not Robert's seed, what of him? What of me? Robert's roar shattered council silence. "Enough!" He hurled the book across marble, pages fluttering like dying ravens. Yet later that night, Gendry woke to voices in his bedchamber. Robert sat at his bedside, eyes bloodshot. "Boy, my son." He searched Gendry's face as though for the first time. "They'll come for you. Lions, wolves, gods know what else. You must be steel, hard and true." He pressed something into Gendry's palm. A ring heavy with black iron, stag crowned in gold. "Storm's End is yours, when you are man-grown. Remember who you are." The lion's claw. A fortnight later, Robert lay dying in a sun-drenched bed, boar-gored on a hunt arranged by subtle hands. Cersei barred the small council chamber. A forged will name Joffrey heir and Lord Protector. Stannis sailed for Dragonstone, rage burning. Renly vanished into the night with Loras Tyrell. The realm cracked like overstretched steel. Gendry found himself a pawn on every counselor's board. Varys warned him in whispers of accidents that befall inconvenient heirs. Littlefinger suggested a swift marriage alliance, to House Tyrell, perhaps, or Martell, to secure his claim ahead of the Golden Stagling. Cersei smiled venomously, offering a place in Joffrey's guard. "You shall stand beside your brother," she purred, "as protector." Jaime's hand brushed his sword hilt at each word. Ser Barristan alone spoke plainly. King Robert named you his heir in Storm's End. I heard it. He advised flight until allies could be summoned. Gendry thought of the sea hammering Storm's End's cliffs, of Maester Cresswell, of the forge's warmth, and knew the old knight was right. That night, disguised in plain leathers, he slipped through Flea Bottom with only his warhammer and a satchel. The city sounds, iron striking iron, dogs barking, drunkards singing, felt oddly welcoming, like memories half-remembered. He crossed a courtyard where a lone smith worked late, sparks mirroring stars. Gendry paused, drawn to the familiar rhythm until the smith glanced up. A scarred cheek, a soot-grimed smile. Tobo Mott, the sign read. Gendry met the man's eyes and felt something inside him settle. But there was no time for forging new ties. Loyal guards smuggled him to the Rush, where a black-sailed galley waited. As dawn painted the sky Baratheon gold, he watched the red keep recede, its towers like clawed fingers clutching a crown. He was 11, unknowing if he fled toward destiny or doom.
Stormborn passage.
The galley rode swift currents, bearing Gendry south around Cape Wrath. Each night he dreamt of anvils ringing and banners snapping, of lions roaring behind closed doors. Seasick yet resolute, he trained on deck with deckhands cheering. The warhammer became extension of his arm, its weight familiar as his own thoughts. One dawn he spotted Dromons on the horizon, sails crimson with the lion's sigil. Word had traveled fast. The chase carried into Shipbreaker Bay, where storms brewed thick. Captain Andrew urged surrender. It was death to challenge Lannister triremes. Gendry's answer was to seize helm. He guided the galley between shoals only a Stormlander might know, letting waves smash upon reefs that shredded lion keels. Thunder cracked as if gods cheered. At dusk, battered but alive, they slipped beneath the shadow of Storm's End. Home, castle of secrets. Stannis awaited on the beach, face stern enough to cow the sea itself. He ushered Gendry into the damp tower's council chamber where candles guttered in salty draughts. Melisandre stood beside him, red fire glowing in her eyes. She called Gendry lordship, spoke of king's blood boiling hot, of Azor Ahai reborn. Stannis silenced her with a gesture, yet her gaze lingered on the boy like a brand searing flesh. That night, over hearth coals, Stannis revealed truth. Gendry had been born in secrecy at the end of Robert's first royal progress. Born not of Cersei, but of a common girl named Bara, quickly spirited away. Jon Arryn counseled Robert to claim the child publicly to secure succession against Lannister designs, but Cersei threatened war. Robert named the boy anyway, forging a brittle peace upon lies. Jon Arryn's death fractured it, and Robert's followed swift. Your claim is the truest, Stannis said, and truer still than mine, for you bear Robert's blood. Yet the realm will not easily kneel to a stripling. We must prove stronger. Gendry listened, forge fires of anger and purpose flaring within. He recalled the smithy's promise. Steel forged in pressure becomes unbreakable. If the realm sought to break him, it would learn too late that he had already been tempered. The wheel turned slowly. Years passed within Storm's End's stone womb while war ravaged beyond. Renly crowned himself at Highgarden and lost his head to shadows. Stannis burned King's men on Dragonstone beaches, banners of the fiery heart rising. Robb Stark's Northmen shattered Lannister hosts at Riverrun before doom at the Twins. And somewhere beyond Narrow Sea, dragons stirred old embers. Yet within Storm's End, Gendry forged himself. He studied battle lore with Ser Davos, tactics with Maester Cresswell, siegecraft with Ser Harbert. He sparred daily with Stannis' household guard, his hammer ringing helm and shield alike. He tempered justice by sitting in Lord's Court, settling disputes of fisherfolk and tenant farmers. They called him the Black Stag, for his forged dark hair and stern but fair judgments. At 15, he ventured among Stormlander lords, earning their fealty not by decree but by labor, helping mend levees after floods, hammering nails in village halls, sharing salt beef around common fires. They saw a prince who bled beside them in storm and toil, when he knelt before the weeping widow of a knight slain by Sel's words and swore vengeance. The small folks' hearts were his. Meanwhile Stannis waged holy war for a stone-iron throne on Dragonstone's black sands. Letters came less often, words edged with desperation and Red Woman prophecy. Yet he trusted Gendry to hold the Stormlands. And hold them the Boy Lord did, hammer in hand, stag ring gleaming whenever sun pierced storm clouds. The Lion and the Lily. On his 17th name day, a raven brought tidings. King Joffrey poisoned at his wedding. The realm gasped, blades poised. Cersei blamed Tyrion, accused Sansa Stark. Yet rumors whispered of Tyrell plots, Dornish vengeances. Tommen now wore the crown, a child in need of regents. Opportunity cracked the Lion's golden armor. Stannis mustered to march on King's Landing. He summoned Gendry. Bring the storm's might. The throne is ours by right. Gendry weighed duty and blood. He remembered Robert's warmth, Joffrey's cruelty, Tommen's innocence. He recalled flea-bottom forges and barefoot memories. The throne was forged of swords. Could it ever birth justice? He gathered his bannermen, Selmies, Dondarrions, Tarths, and rode for Blackwater ruins where Stannis encamped. Fires burned low, soldiers thinned by years of war. Melisandre welcomed Gendry as a sacrifice walking. Stannis saw his nephew and faltered, love battling zeal. They hugged like iron clashing iron. Nightfall draped the camp when Gendry entered Stannis' tent and placed his warhammer upon the map table. Uncle, I will fight beside you, but the realm needs more than victory. It needs forging anew. He spoke of roads repaired, grain stores protected, justice served swift. Win the throne, yes, but rule as a smith rules fire. With patience, with care, or metal will shatter. Stannis listened, grim lines softening. Words are wind without steel. Then let us temper both, Gendry answered. The Blackwater reforged. They marched at dawn, ships hugging coastlines wary of wildfire traps. Gendry commanded the vanguard, warhammer whirling. At the gates of King's Landing, gold cloaks met them, half starving, half fearful. Gendry's banner of a black-crowned stag rippled above. Small folk cheered, remember.
Ingenier Robertes Jovial Reign.
Inside the Red Keep, Cersei clutched Tommen, Jaime at her side. Tywin rode hard from Harrenhal yet days away. Battle song echoed through cobbled streets while tower bells told doom and hope alike. Gendry led Stormlander infantry through Lion Gate, shielded by fleets of fishermen archers who hailed him as Seaborn Stag. He broke through courtyard phalanx alone, hammer-crushing gilt armor like tin. At Maidenvault steps he faced Jaime Lannister, Kingslayer, uncle, once guardian. Jaime's eyes flicked to the hammer. You hold your father's fury in that. And my own, Gendry said. Their duel rang brighter than any forge. Jaime's speed met Gendry's raw power until sparks leaped from sword and hammer. At last Gendry fainted low, driving Jaime back against broken balustrade. Blood glittered at the Kingslayer's temple. Yet Gendry held the killing stroke.
Yield, sir.
Your sister is lost. The realm must heal. Jaime laughed, bitter and oddly relieved. He dropped his sword. Pray you heal it better than we did. Inside, Cersei barricaded the throne room, Red Cloak loyalists ringing the Iron Throne. Tommen wept in fear. Gendry pushed open the massive doors, helm under arm. My lady, he said, voice echoing. No more blood for a seat of swords. Cersei's face, once sculpted perfection, was drawn sharp. You are a bastard's lie, she hissed. I will not yield my son's birthright. Tommen is innocent, Gendry replied. He shall be cared for, but the realm knows truth now. He stepped forward, offering not steel but a hand. Let us end this. Behind him, Stannis entered, Melisandre's red shadows flickering. Cersei saw the fiery heart, shuddered. She drew a dagger, dragonbone, slender. Before she could act, Tommen seized her wrist. Mother, please. Tears shone. The blade clattered, echoing like a tolling bell. Anvil of peace. 3 days later, bells rang again. this time for coronation beneath a sky washed clear by rain. In the ruined September of Baelor, Maester Cresswell crowned Gendry I of House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Undulls, the Roiner, and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, Protector of the Realm. He wore not the barbed golden circlet Robert favored, but a band of black iron mingled with yellow gold, hammer forged in Storm's End's own fires. He called it the Worker's Crown. His first edict freed small folk from debts accrued under Lannister usury. His second declared Tommen Baratheon Prince of the Narrow Sea and Ward of Storm's End until of age. Cersei was sent to the Silent Sisters, her tongue stilled more effectively than any dungeon. Stannis became Hand, grudging but steadfast. Renly's ghost lingered in Arthur Tyrell's uneasy smiles, yet Highgarden bent knee for promise of fairer levies. The North, wounded by war, eyed the new Black Stag King with cautious hope. Gendry traveled afar, listening to grievances, hammer at saddle, no sword. Smith's hammered plates inscribed with his pledge, "Justice, like iron, is strongest when folded by many hands, embers yet to stir. Yet peace, like molten steel, requires constant tempering." Across the sea, dragons grew under a silver-haired queen. In Dorne, vipers whispered avenging Elaya's blood. The faith militant stirred, displeased by a king who spent more hours with masons than septons. And somewhere inside Stannis' heart, red fire still smoldered at prophecy unfulfilled. Gendry stood atop the battlements of the Red Keep one dusk, watching the Blackwater reflect dying sun. The forge of destiny still roared. Blades yet unshaped awaited his hammer. He closed his fist around Robert's stag ring, feeling its weight, the past's burden, the future's promise. Storm winds off the narrow sea tousled his hair. He smiled, the sea's whispers echoing in his pulse. He had been born in shadow, raised in truth's hard fire, and now he would forge a realm worthy of its people. Or break upon the anvil trying. 500 characters without line break markup. Winter's breath had not yet reached the capital, but a crisp salt wind swept in from Blackwater Bay each dawn, sharp enough to sting cheeks and tousle the torches guttering along the outer barbican. Gendry Baratheon rose with that wind every morning. He donned a plain jerkin of dark wool, slid his heavy stag ring onto the knuckle of his right thumb, and left his royal apartments before the sun cleared the bay's rim. Ser Rabar Royce, one of the few knights he trusted implicitly, shadowed him in silence. Together they descended narrow servants' stairs slick with early dew, bypassing sleepy gold cloaks, until the Red Keep's cavernous postern disgorged them onto the cobbles of the city below. No herald announced him, no trumpets split the dawn. Fisherwomen unloading wriggling catches merely glanced at the tall youth who strode past, lugging a warhammer wrapped in oiled leather. A few recognized the crowned stag scar worked into that covering, but most assumed some Stormlander lordling on errand. Gendry liked it so. He hungered for the city's breath unfiltered by courtiers' perfumes. He always stopped at a particular bakehouse on River Row where an old Tyroshi master kneaded loaves infused with olives and salt crystals. With 3 copper stars, Gendry bought 2, handing one to Ser Rabar, tearing the other with his teeth while sea gulls wheeled overhead. Grease spotted his beard stubble. The warmth of fresh bread reminded him of forge heat on a winter morning. From there they crossed creaking wharves to the quiet alcove of the Sailmakers' Guildhall. The hammer came unwrapped. Inside, men and women waited with ripped canvas and broken masts, casualties of last night's squall. Gendry listened, asked questions a harbor master might, not a king. He knelt to inspect a snapped spar. "Ash will not do," he told the foreman. "Look for ironwood and lash the splice with leather before tar." The guildsman murmured approval. Here was a ruler who spoke their tongue, who did not wave silken gloves over calluses and expect miracles. When tasks were parceled and promises made, coin for timber, leniency on harbor taxes, Gendry left the hammer with the Guildhall smith to replace its leather thong. Then, wiping sawdust from his palms, he climbed the city as the sun rose crimson behind Dragonstone's silhouette. By the time he reached the Red Keep's gardens, bells told prime and courtiers scuttled through columned galleries like jeweled beetles late to feast. Stannis waited in the small council chamber flanked by Ser Davos and Maester Cresswell. Scrolls lay stacked around a rough-drawn map of the kingdoms. Stannis's gaze swept Gendry's clothes, plain, dusted with flour. "You visit docks again," he observed, not quite disapproving. "The docks are the city's arteries," Gendry answered, sipping small beer as he took his seat. "Healthy blood keeps the realm alive. Blood requires coin," Davos said, thumb passing over the stump where once 2 fingers had been. "And coin we are short on." He tapped a ledger. Littlefinger's schemes left the crown 6 million stags in debt. Maybe more. Maester Cresswell cleared his throat. "Lords, the mint cannot strike without silver. The Lannisters hoarded what remained in Casterly vaults before Tywin's death." Stannis's knuckles whitened. "Collect tariffs. Seize smugglers' ships. If needs be, melt down sept bells." Gendry shook his head. "We will not win loyalty burning chapels. There's another way." All eyes turned. Gendry unrolled a parchment he had carried from the Guildhall. Designs for tidal mills along the Blackwater Rush, powered by the river's constant surge. "Iron gears," he explained, "to grind flour and press olive oil without men working the stones. Sell the surplus across the reach and stepstones. The crown retains a share." Davos raised a brow. "How long to build?" 6 moons for the first pair," Gendry replied. "Less if we conscript the smiths of Storm's End." Stannis studied the drawing. "Ambitious, yet merchants may call it folly." "Merchants called Baelor sept folly," Gendry reminded. "Now pilgrims pour gold into lanterns each year. We must forge wealth, not beg it." Cresswell nodded slowly. "Such works recall old Valyria's water wheels. Innovation would signal a new era. Black iron, not gilt lion." Stannis gave the faintest grunt, a sign of approval for him. "Make it so. Davos, draft charters. Levy laborers but pay them fair. Let no one say we build on whipped backs." That afternoon, Tommen practiced archery on the East Terrace. The boy still wore Lannister red trimmed with black stag, confusing symbolism that troubled heralds, but he loosed shafts earnestly under Ser Barristan's watchful eye. Gendry approached, catching a quiver before it toppled. "Brace the base wider," he advised. Tommen's cheeks reddened. "Your Grace," Barristan said, bowing. His white cloak gleamed, matching snowy brows.
Otis, Ser, Gendry replied.
He stood behind Tommen, guiding the lad's elbow. "Loose when you feel the breath in your chest pause." The arrow flew, striking straw between painted ribs. Tommen's delight shone brighter than any crown. They spent an hour so, king and ward, teacher and pupil, until shadows lengthened. Tommen asked timidly, "Will I ever ride to war?" The question stung. Boys should speak of kittens and honeycakes, but in Westeros, war was the air they breathed. "Only fools hunger for war," Gendry answered. "Yet should it come, you will be ready to protect, not destroy. A king, any king, serves the realm first." Tommen considered. "Mother always said the realm serves us." "Your mother loved you fiercely," Gendry said carefully. "But love can blind. Service clears the eyes." Barristan watched, approval hidden behind solemn blue gaze. Later, as Tommen chased rabbits with a squire, the old knight spoke low. "You teach him gentleness in strength." Prince Rhaegar believed the same. Gendry wondered if that were compliment or warning. That evening the royal smithy glowed red. Gendry shed his jerkin, muscles slick with sweat as he hammered a visor for Lord Selmy's nephew. Sparks flew like orange bees. A visiting Bravosi armorer observed, nodding at technique. "King who works iron earns iron loyalty," he said in thick accent. Gendry only grunted, shoulders aching yet alive. From the doorway, Melisandre watched. Her scarlet silk drank the forge light until she seemed an ember in female form. "Kings are not meant for soot and blister," she murmured. "All men are," he replied without stopping. Metal rang. "Only difference is whether they admit it." Her ruby choker pulsed as if with heartbeat. "You hammer blades while the darkness rises beyond seas unseen." The true war creeps closer. Azor Ahai must stand ready. Gendry quenched the visor in oil, steam hissing. Your visions crucified my father's reign. I'll not let prophecy forge mine. The flames showed me a stag crowned in shadow fighting a dragon of night, she said. If you deny the Lord of Light, the realm will drown in ice. He slid the visor onto a rack. When winter comes, we'll face it with steel and firewood, not sorcery that burns children. Her lips curved. King or blacksmith, you cannot quench destiny. Then she was gone, leaving only the ruby's afterglow. Ravens arrived weekly from Dragonstone, bearing Stannis' seal but Melisandre's flame-stained words. Reports of spotted direwolves in the Narrows, visions of frozen corpses walking. The king's study smelled of charred parchment after each reading. Gendry wished to ignore them yet could not. Denial was as dangerous as blind faith. One crisp morning, Ser Davos requested private audience. He closed the chamber doors, humility in every line. Your Grace, sailors whisper of red priests preaching in dockside taverns. They burn wooden lions and talk of cleansing flames. The faith of the Seven grows uneasy. Gendry scraped a calloused thumb across stubble. Send the city watch to keep peace. No torches in temples, no swords in taverns. Easier said, Davos warned. When tongues sharpen to daggers, then we dull them with bread, Gendry said. Announce a harvest festival by the mother's statue. Free loaves for every child. Faith feeds on fear. We'll feed bellies instead. Davos smiled, half grim. Stormlander common sense. I'll see it done. Later, Gendry drafted a decree. Tolerance for all gods unless worship harmed the innocent. Some lords would balk, yet he hoped the Seven's High Septon, recently elected, rumored austere, might accept compromise. Unknown to him, that same Septon knelt in alabaster halls plotting holy restoration, spurred by whispers that a Smith King consorted with fiery heretics. Autumn's end brought Prince Doran Martell's envoy. Illyria Sand, hair cascading like dusk, arrived at Maegor's holdfast escorted by copper-armored spearmen. She bowed with Dornish fluidity, presenting silk-wrapped oranges and a letter sealed with sun and spear. My prince offers friendship, if you will release Princess Myrcella to Sunspear's wardship once more. Gendry received them in a modest solar, a single guardsman outside. Myrcella was promised safe haven in Dorne, he said. She remains so, but to send her south now might imply weakness. Illyria's amber eyes softened. Or strength, your grace. An open palm invites trust more than a closed gauntlet. He poured her watered wine himself, Stormlander courtesy. They spoke long of trade winds, Dornish wine tariffs, and scorpion poison shortages along the Boneway. As dusk fell, Gendry agreed Myrcella would travel under Baratheon guard after winter. In return, Dorne would supply silver from the abandoned mines east of Vaith, or enough to feed the mint for 5 years. Illyria left impressed by the king's blunt warmth. Gendry watched her litter vanish down serpentine stairs, mind measuring coin weight versus political risk. That night Stannis stormed in, letter in fist. Dorne harbored Renly's killers. You would trust them? Vengeance kills more than foes, Gendry answered. We need silver more than blood. Stannis glowered.
Practicality rav sonor.
Honor without bread birth is dream, Gendry countered. I'll forge both. He expected fury. Instead, Stannis' expression cracked with reluctant pride. Your father would have shattered skulls to reach same outcome. You temper steel first. Snowflakes drifted over King's Landing by the second moon of winter. They melted on steaming rooftops but lingered on ramparts, painting crenellation's ghostly white. Gendry rode through the new-fallen dust on a massive destrier storm, a gray stallion with a mane like smoke. Tommen trotted beside on a chestnut pony. They inspected ongoing repairs to Flea Bottom, sewage channels lined with fresh brick, a grain granary re-roofed in slate, tidal sheds framing the future mills. Children waved, shouting "Black Stag!" Ragged sailors doffed caps. Gendry dismounted to help a one-armed veteran lift barrel staves, Tommen copying with smaller plank. Snow clung to their hair. Laughter rang, rare and raw. From a balcony above, Marjorie Tyrell observed, green velvet cloak brushing marbled baluster. Her grandmother Olenna stood near, eyes sharp under silk scarf. The Queen of Thorns sniffed. Not the courtliest of princes, that lad, but he wields hearts like a sword. Marjorie smiled. He wields them like a hammer, slow, deliberate, never misses. She watched Tommen grin up at his half-brother king. Imagine the realm if hearts were his only weapon. Olenna's fingers tapped her cane. Imagination is for singers. For queens, we craft futures. A Baratheon needs a rose to soften storms. Marjorie blushed yet did not object. The High Septon struck at first thaw. In the September of Baelor, before thousands of worshippers, he condemned the blacksmith usurper and his red priest concubines for leading the realm astray. He proclaimed the faith militant reborn. Sparrows given swords, brothers given star-inlaid shields. Poor and pious flocked to his call, armed with cudgels and farmers' scythes. Within days they patrolled cobbled streets, smashing tavern casks, scourging sinners who dared labor on Maiden's Day. Red priests they dragged from altars, beating them bloody. The city watch, outnumbered, hesitated. Strike at the faith and risk holy war, or let chaos reign? Ser Rabar rushed to the Red Keep with news of two smiths hanged outside the Great September. Guilt by trade to the Smith King. Gendry's jaw set. We end this before blood drowns gutters. He donned boiled leather hauberk and stag helm, hammered thin to speed his stride. No crown, no cloak, only iron. At dusk, he marched alone toward the September. Ser Rabar and 100 Stormlander spears trailing but commanded to stay outside unless called. The faithful barred the doors with iron-banded planks. Gendry rapped 3 times with gauntlet fist. Each blow echoed like thunder. Open, he said. Silence. He stepped back, swung the warhammer once, twice, a third time, doors splintered inward. He walked through shards into incense gloom. Candles flickered on murals of the Seven. The High Septon stood before the mother's statue, clad in cloth of silver, star-shaped crystal on breast. A dozen warriors' sons ringed him, axes ready. King, the Septon intoned, voice booming through vaults. Your profane path ends. Kneel, confess, accept penance. Gendry advanced until hammer haft scraped flagstone. I kneel to no man. My crown was forged by the people you flog. The Seven judge all, the Septon cried. They despise false kings. Gendry's gaze traveled the gathered faithful, fear, zeal, hunger in equal measure. Does the smith despise a man who hammers peace? Does the mother despise a king who feeds children? I forged grain lofts this very week. What have you forged but fear? Murmurs rippled. The Septon's face flushed. Blasphemy! Seize him! Warriors' sons surged. Gendry met the first with an upward hammer swing, driving breastplate into ribs. Second lost axe to parry and elbow. He moved with brutal grace, each blow measured like forging iron. Strike, twist, quench. The faithful staggered back, some dropping weapons. Gendry halted before the Septon blood-speckling helm. Killing you fuels flame of martyrdom, he said. He reached out, seized the crystal star, yanked. Chain snapped. The Septon gasped. Gendry flung the symbol onto cracked marble. Hold your faith, but hold your peace. Leave the ruling to rulers, else I melt this sept into nails for coffins. He stepped away. The Septon trembled yet did not speak. Gendry looked at the watchers. Go home. Pray if you will, work if you can. The realm needs both. He left through shattered doors under star-washed night. No warrior followed. Next dawn, ravens spoke of the faith militant disbanding, for now, and the High Septon retiring to silent contemplation. Rumor said he wept before the altar, having seen the smith's avatar in mortal flesh. Gendry cared little for rumor. He cared that no more smiths hung from lampposts. Despite temporary peace, the court simmered. Lords of the Reach feared Gendry's rising peasant following. An anvil revolution, sneered Pax to Redwine. Lady Tanda Stokeworth asked if linens could still be imported duty-free. When told yes, but taxed fairly, she nearly fainted. Some Stormlander bannermen muttered that their young lord spent too much time with commoners and not enough planning for war. Stannis counseled forging alliances. You have goodwill, but lords crave marriage contracts. The names paraded: Asha Greyjoy, impossible; Arian Martell, tangled; Marjorie Tyrell, most sensible. Gendry recalled Tyrell roses fluttering above Renly's camp before Shadow ended that dream. Could a new dream bloom? Olenna arrived uninvited, claiming the crown owed her pickled capers. She found Gendry in the castle smithy polishing a length of chainmail. A king who dirties his own hands, she tooted, prodding with cane. You'll ruin the wardrobe budget. I mend what I break, Gendry said. Let us mend kingdoms. She presented a parchment: Marjorie's dowry, grain silos for the capital, 100 gold cloaks equipped at Tyrell expense, forgiveness of certain crown debts. In return, marriage within the year, Highgarden voice on council, promise of heirs. Gendry eyed the dowry list. I won't be a figurehead groom. Olenna's smile sharpened. Nor will my granddaughter be a silent broodmare. She intends to rule at your side. He considered Marjorie's gentle guidance of Tommen these past weeks, teaching sums, coaxing him from grief into laughter. A queen who nurtured rather than devoured. Still, memory of calloused hands in flea-bottom nagged. Love for a smith's hammer rarely wed roses. But the realm required weaves of iron and silk. Very well, he said. But know this, in my forge all metals mix. The rose shall learn the language of the hammer. Flourish and thorn, Olenna murmured. A bouquet strong enough to crack stone. Beyond seas, Daenerys Targaryen watched Astapor's pyramids burn, enemy fleets smoldering in Slaver's Bay. Messengers brought tidings of Westeros's new monarch. Robert's bastard raised Trueborn, crowned upon iron. She traced the map with slender finger. Blackwater Bay, Storm's End, Dragonstone. Baratheon, she whispered. A hammer killed my brother's dream. Will I face the hammer's son? Her counsel argued. Dario laughed. A king born of whores and hammers? Will break him like dried reeds. Barristan Selmy, who once guided Gendry's arrow, shifted uncomfortably. Daenerys's eyes glinted violet fire. Reeds slice the hand if gripped rashly. We will forge allies before invasion. She dispatched envoys to Dorne and the Vale, promising justice for Elia and freedom for all. Across narrow sea, winds of change gathered, but Westeros scarcely noticed, consumed by harvest festivals and faith debates. Spring thaw revealed first completed tidal mill. Its wooden will churned Blackwater's green current, powering grindstones beneath stone arches. Gendry led a procession of guildmasters to witness inaugural turn. He pressed a lever. Gears groaned, water cascaded, wheat poured between millstones. Flour dust filled air like holy incense. The crowd erupted in cheers. Tommen clapped, white sleeves flowered like a baker. Marjorie, beside Gendry, smiled, eyes shining at the sight of labor rewarded. Stannis allowed his mouth to twitch upward. First of many, Gendry said. Let this will feed orphan and lord alike. Banners lifted. Black stag on gold, green rose on gold, russet onion of House Seaworth. For one perfect moment, the realm felt united by something other than fear. That night, foremen counted sacks of flour, more in one day than 100 donkey-driven querns produced in a month. Grain costs dropped, bakers expanded, children's bellies rounded. The hammer's promise became bread, but forging prosperity roused envy. Kevin Lannister, Warden of the West since Tywin's death, refused shipments of silver or to city mints, citing security concerns. Ships from Lannisport ceased. Smelters cooled. Gendry penned courteous requests, received curt replies. Finally, he summoned Kevin to court. The Lion arrived with 200 men, banners crimson as sunset. They clashed not steel but words. In throne room hung with stag banners, Kevin voiced grievances. Confiscated Lannister lands at Maidenpool, Lyness phrased dowry unpaid, rumors that Tommen might become Ward of Dragonstone. We deserve assurances, he finished, before our silver fills your coffers. Gendry replied with open ledger. Debts tallied, interest rates usurious. Assurances will be repaid when extortion ends. Lower the crown's interest, silver flows again. Kevin stiffened. My family saved this realm from famine. And starved it with the bill, Gendry said, voice calm as distant thunder. I'll not trade one tyrant's yoke for another's. Talk stalled, yet somewhere amid sparring, respect sparked. Kevin saw a king not of drunken ease but steely resolve. Gendry saw a lion worn by duty, not greed. They agreed to meeting on neutral ground, Tumbleton, once bridge of Blackwater. In exchange for reduced interest and crown recognition of Lannister rights to Castamere mines, silver would resume and 50 smiths sent west to teach Will construction. When Kevin departed, Davos exhaled. You do with words what many kings attempt with swords. Words are cheaper than funerals, Gendry said. In early summer, a pale mare disease struck the eastern docks, fever burning flesh to bone in days. Physicians panicked, calling for quarantines. Gendry emptied his own treasury to build leper tents beyond city walls, hired Myrish healers at triple wage, and waded through sickness distributing boiled willow bark tea. When the fever reached a toddler clutching rag doll, he carried her himself to healer's cot. She lived. Rumor spread. King who bears the sick as gently as steel. Yet even kings bleed. Exhaustion felled him one dawn. Shivering, sweating in his chambers, Maester Cresswell applied leeches, fearing plague. Marjorie sat vigil, reading aloud from tales of Garth Greenhand. Stannis paced like caged dire wolf, unwilling to kneel to any god yet muttering prayers. On the third night, fever broke. Gendry awoke, voice hoarse, requesting hammer and anvil. Need to shape a gift, he whispered. Cresswell sputtered but yielded. A convalescent king forging tokens became legend by first light. The gift proved a delicate circlet of twisted silver wires embossed with rose and stag, a betrothal piece. He offered it to Marjorie before the entire court, kneeling on polished basalt. Gasp swept hall. Olenna murmured something about finally and dabbed her eyes. Marjorie accepted, slipping circlet into chestnut curls. The small folk later said the hammer of a Baratheon had wed the bloom of Highgarden, forging hope stronger than steel. Across narrow sea, Daenerys's fleet grew, ships of Volantis, Karth, Tolos. Dragons circled masts like living heralds. Her council argued for immediate sail, yet she paused, studying parchment lists of Westerosi reforms. A king of the people, she mused, yet still a usurper. Justice warred with vengeance within her. Barristan, old and weary of crowns, counseled patience. He may be ally, not foe, Dario scoffed. Lions, stags, wolves, prey for dragons. But dragons matured, scales thickening, fire hot enough to melt city gates. War would eventually call. In slaver pits of Meereen, a red priest prophesied. When hammer meets dragon flame, the world shall be remade. Daenerys listened, eyes reflecting emberlight. Gendry knew none of this the night he stood on the Red Keep's highest parapet, gazing at stars strewn like molten flecks across velvet. Beside him stood Arya Stark, face uncovered for the first time since she'd arrived as Cat of the Canals. She had slipped through Blackwater fisher camps, blades hidden in boots. Davos, suspicious, had followed and confronted her beneath a moonlit archway. Only then did she reveal dancing master steps and stark wolf medallion. Now she leaned on the Merlin, wind whipping dark hair. North remembers, she said, voice low. It remembers you fought with honor at Harrenhal's relief and fed starving villages when others burned them. She spoke of Jon Snow crowned king in the north, of White Walkers stirring beyond the wall, of need for unity. Gendry listened, hammer calluses gripping stone. Memories flickered. Rowing with Arya down Black River, bull helm on his brow, Brotherhood caves echoing laughter. You took a different path, he said. We all did, she answered. Paths converge. She handed him a scroll sealed with direwolf. Jon Snow proposed alliance. Grain for northern winter, swords for realm's defense, recognition of Gendry's crown in exchange for aid against the dead. No one south believed the dead walked, but Arya's gray eyes held steel. Gendry looked north where constellations wheeled. He felt again Melisandre's warnings, Daenerys's distant fire, the Faith's resentment, Lannister negotiations. A king's burden heavier than any warhammer. Yet if winter's true enemy marched, forging alliances became not politics but survival. "We will meet at Winterfell," he said, "under same roof that once sheltered my father and your brother." Arya nodded, a small smile ghosting. "I'll ride ahead." Before she left, he pressed into her palm a miniature hammer of black steel on wolf chain. "For the road," he said. She waited, eyes bright, then vanished into night. Midsummer wedding bells pealed through King's Landing like silver hammers. Marjorie walked the great September's rebuilt aisle-clad not in lion gilt but in gown of sea-green silk embroidered with roses and stags entwined. Gendry wore breastplate dark as storm cloud, circlet of black iron. At his hip hung the warhammer, symbol of rule, tool of labor. The High Septon, newly appointed, moderate, blessed union in name of Seven, Smith foremost. As vows exchanged, crowds outside roared approval. Inside, Tommen scattered rose petals, face radiant. Olenna sniffed, satisfied. Stannis watched serious yet content. Davos wiped eyes. Feast spilled into night. Dornish wines, reach stews, Stormland's crab pies. Minstrels sang of hammer kings and blooming queens. In courtyard, Gendry danced with bakers' daughters and dockhands' wives. Marjorie with farmers and knights alike. For one night, hierarchy melted like candle wax. Before dawn's gray light, husband and wife slipped from feast to ramparts. City slept in embrace of gentle fog. Marjorie traced the callus on Gendry's thumb. "Hard as horn," she whispered. "Soft enough to feel heartbeats," he replied, laying hand on her chest. Below, tidal will churned, steady as pulse. They spoke of future, orphan halls, hospital ships, highways uniting north and south. They talked of children, brown-haired lads with hammer fists, green-eyed girls with gardener's grace. Dreams forged in starlight, tempered by wind. Marjorie stared east where horizons smoldered pre-dawn red. "Storms gather. Let them," Gendry said. "We've steel to spare." Autumn came again, carrying ravens heavy with news. Daenerys Targaryen had taken Volantis without bloodshed. Her fleet now numbered 500 sails, dragons grown to shadow mountains. Jon Snow marched south to the Neck, undead sightings multiplying. The Vale's Lord Robert Arryn died of chill, Lord Baelish missing. Perhaps fled across narrow sea. Gendry convened Grand Council. Lords arrived from every corner. Ned Dane from Starfall, Galbart Glover. Edmure Tully released from Fry chains, Jon Royce gleaming bronze. They argued, bargained, toasted. Debates raged until hammers of words forged treaty. North and Riverlands to fight under Baratheon banner against dead. Reach and Stormlands to supply grain. Dorne to guard southern coast. Vale to send knights once Regency settled. Some balked at Targaryen threat. Dragons over capital would undo all. Gendry proposed envoys to Meereen. Offer alliance against dead. Promise new council with seats for Dragon Queen. No throne worth realm's ruin. Stannis, jaw rigid, disapproved. Targaryens bring fire as dire as ice. Then we shape fire into blade, Gendry said. Dragons forged storms end once. Let them forge peace. Council approved by narrow margin. Davos volunteered to sail, emissary of storms. When he departed Blackwater Mouth, gulls trailed gull wings over foam as if bidding luck. In forge beneath Dragonstone's smoking cliffs, Gendry labored alongside master smiths on a new project. Obsidian-tipped spears and arrows, rumored bane of white shadows. Shipments of dragonglass came from caves Stannis once mined. Gendry hefted the brittle black stone, remembered forging first crude stag head at Storm's End. How far Hammer had traveled. Night after night he worked until knuckles bled, then met with scholars to chart undead sightings. Each mark on map chilled hotter than forge. He drilled with Night's Watch veterans, learning swing patterns against foes who felt no pain. He sparred Arya, who returned with Northern Outriders. Her water dance met his hammer's brutal arcs in Dance of Ice and Fire. One dawn, while waves crashed and gulls cried, Melisandre appeared at Forge entrance. She watched sparks flare around Dragonglass. "You choose Shadow's weapon," she said. "I choose any that saves lives," Gendry replied. Ruby pulsed. "When long night falls, Red God's flame guides only hope. Hope also rides King's Road," he countered, wiping soot, "and hides in wolf fur, and beats in dragon wings." She studied him, smile something's wish in sorrow and wonder. Perhaps hammer forged more than blades. Perhaps it forged heart of realm. Word arrived from Davos by swift galley. Daenerys accepted counsel. She would sail for Dragonstone in weeks, seek Parley at Storm's End beyond Old Painted Table. News spread across capital like wildfire. Some cheered, dreaming alliance. Others fretted, remembering Mad King's blaze. Kevin Lannister strengthened Red Keep garrison, though coin purse now shared. Marjorie joined Gendry atop Storm's End's drum tower to watch sunset dye sea copper. "Will realms survive dragons?" she asked. He draped black cloak around her shoulders. "Realm survives every hammer strike I've delivered so far. Dragons may temper steel further." She leaned into him. "And if they shatter it? Then we reforge," he said, gaze on horizon. "Metal breaks, we melt it, start anew." She laughed softly. "You truly are a smith before a king." "A smith king," he corrected, kissing her brow. "And there is always another dawn for forging." Below, waves pounded ancient walls, unbroken after 10,000 storms. Above, first evening star ignited, lone spark in dusky forge of sky. Gendry Baratheon watched it flare, a reminder that the hardest steel begins as a single glimmer in dark or before hammer and flame give it shape. He would face dragons and dead, faith and fire, love and loss. He would wield hammer until arm failed, then teach another the stroke. Life, like indomitable Storm's End, would stand or fall upon the strength he forged tonight, tomorrow, every day. For the realm was an ever-glowing forge, and he its tireless smith, beating injustice into blades, fear into plowshares, despair into hope, and the hammer rang on. Mist piled thick over Blackwater Bay when Davos Seaworth's black-hulled sloop slipped its moorings. Lanterns were hooded, sails reefed tight. The crew whispered still as the tide bore them past the riprap breakwater. On the quay, Gendry stood beside Ser Rabar and Maester Cresswell, watching the ship's shadow merge with gloom until no sign marked its passage save a ripple gone as soon as it appeared. The king rested a hand on the maester's ledge-thin shoulder, feeling bones and brittle devotion beneath wool and leather. "He'll make Meereen," Cresswell murmured, eyes reflecting torch glow and fear. Davos could convince a kraken to quit the sea if he tried long enough. Gendry nodded but kept gaze fixed upon the dark. He tasted brine on his lips, remembered the pitch of waves under Storm's End's cliffs, remembered shaping iron in wind so strong sparks returned like stinging rain. The narrow sea was forging Davos now, beating seawater and salt into the old knight's hope. When the sloop vanished utterly, Gendry turned toward the Red Keep's gates without another word, cloak snapping in the gust that followed him uphill. In council that day Stannis railed that sending Davos unescorted was folly. Melisandre said the Lord of Light guided true vessels through night. Kevin Lannister suggested dispatching spy ships to watch for dragons. Gendry listened, answering sparingly, hammering stray fears back into silent submission. After, he joined the Guildmaster of Masons below the Great September ruins, studying foundation trenches for new hospitals. He examined quarried blocks, measured timbers, shouldered a beam himself when a crane rope frayed. Sweat streaked his cheeks. The Faith's apprentices gaped as the king hefted burden none of them dared lift. By evening he reached his solar, stripped tunic from aching shoulders, and found Marjorie waiting with a basin of hot water and cloth scented with lemon. She washed mortar dust from his hands, tracing half-healed blisters along palm lines. "A smith should wear gloves," she said. "Even when building kingdoms. Gloves dull the sense," he replied, flexing fingers. "I need to feel the grain of stone." Laughter flickered in her green eyes, tempered by worry. "Feel too much and you forget to feel yourself." She guided him to the cushioned bench by the window, pressed warm cloth to the knot of muscle just beneath his collarbone. The pain eased. Outside, city lights quivered like candles tubs in wind. "Word from the north," she said, drawing a folded raven letter from her belt. "Lord Glover reports a raid on a logging camp inside the Wolfswood. Dead men walked and would not die until heads were removed." Gendry swallowed the iron taste that rose unbidden. "Numbers. 20, 14 loggers slain." Her voice trembled, though she kept the cloth steady on his skin. "They burned the bodies, but the smell lingered 3 days. 3 days." He exhaled slow. "We must accelerate dragonglass production and send seasoned captains to escort northern grain convoys south for milling. The mills can feed as far as White Harbor if ships keep schedule. I'll have Randall Tarley's son draft timetables," she said. "He's keen for duty." She dabbed a final line of grit from his thumb. "And you, my Stormsmith, will you rest?" He kissed her brow. "Tomorrow, or after the next forge cools." She smiled, tired, proud, and left before candles burned half-height. Alone, Gendry crossed to the war table. Painted tokens marked host positions. Wolves massing at Moat Cailin, lions guarding the Gold Road, roses tending harvest in the Mander Valley. At Dragonstone, a single white shell represented Daenerys's fleet, still distant yet inevitable. He moved the shell 1 inch closer to Storm's End, felt sudden chill along spine. Wind rattled shutters. The warhammer hanging above the hearth trembled against its iron rack. He slept little that night. Dreams swarmed. Davos kneeling before a silver-haired queen as dragons circled overhead. Jon Snow reaching out from a blizzard, one eye blind, the other pleading. Melisandre and the High Septon locked in fiery embrace, their shadows merging with a stag crowned in living flame. He woke before dawn, heart thudding as though still swinging a hammer. Within days, the city buzzed with stranger news. A Braavosi spice cog slipped into harbor under cover of darkness bearing refugees from Pentos. They swore an ocean of whites had walked straight into the waves at Morash, vanishing beneath, perhaps moving unseen toward the stepstones. Sailors told of sea ice drifting farther south than in living memory, whitebergs crowding lanes once warm as bathwater. Even hardened smugglers hesitated now to leave sight of coast. Gendry called a special meeting in the throne room, inviting captains, fishermen, navigators. They came, ragged, wary, yet curious to stand where power sat. He ordered benches set on marble, poured ale for all, listened deep. Tales spilled like spilled grain. Ghost ships coded in rhyme. Whales beaching on Myrish shores. Stars disappearing behind curtains of green fire at edge of horizon. When the last fisherman spoke, voice broken, Gendry rose atop the dais but not upon the iron throne. Instead he balanced hammerhead on marble, shaft upright, palms resting on pommel. "Fear is an ocean," he said, voice carrying in hush. "Waves strike, tides pull, but there is rock beneath and we are that rock. We will build safe harbors at Crackclaw Point and Dragonstone. Light beacons high as Hightower itself. No ship will brave darkness alone." An old Pentoshi captain spit into palm, touched his forehead seafarer's blessing, and muttered, "Stormborn indeed." The others echoed knuckle taps on tables. The tide of dread eased, replaced by grim purpose. When the throng filed out, Stannis approached. "Harbors cost gold," he said. "So does coffining drowned men," Gendry answered. They shared a rare, flinty grin. Markdown, the first snows of deep winter, not calendar winter, but the creeping unnatural kind, fell upon King's Landing 3 weeks later. Flakes melted on rooftops yet lay in alley shadows long after sunrise. Small folk stared skyward as though expecting giants to descend on clouds. Children tasted flakes, declared them bitter. Maester Cresswell collected samples and discovered fine dust threaded between crystals. ash from distant fires, perhaps, or something older. On a pale afternoon painted with sullen sky, the raven from Davos arrived, feathers bedraggled with long flight. The parchment smelled of brine and dragon smoke. Gendry gathered small council in the solar adjoining the queen's chambers. Margaery sat beside him, silent scribe recording every breath. The letter, Your Grace, I have stood before Daenerys Stormborn. She comes with dragons grown thrice the height of war horses, wings that cast streets in shadow. Yet she listened. I laid forth our cause. The dead in the north, the mills that feed the living, the wheel you would break with hammer and rose. She doubts still, her claim is forged in grief, but she has agreed to parley at Storm's End come first full moon. She will bring 2 dragons as guard and her council of knights and freedmen. I sail ahead to ensure safe landing. Prepare hospitality equal to her hope or equal to her wrath. 7 guard you. D. The wax at bottom bore imprint of a kraken. Manderley's borrowed seal, perhaps, convenient maritime sign. The room fell to whispers. Margaery spoke first. A queen of dragon flame meets king of flame-forged iron. The Citadel scribes will write songs for centuries. If any live to sing, Kevin muttered. Ser Davos's younger son, now master of ships, suggested scorpion bolts on ramparts. Stannis glared him silent. We meet as allies. Gendry set fist on map. Any bolt loosed without my order ends on the archer's head. He turned to Kevin. Ready the West Range storehouses. Casks of Dornish red, barrels of Arbor gold. And my mother's capers, Margaery added. Even Kevin chuckled thinly. Preparations consumed days. Storm's End bustled like beehive. Tapestries washed, sea salt scraped from lintels, drapes sewn bearing new crown and rose sigil. Gendry oversaw forge crews tempering extra dragonglass blades, gifts for the Dragon Queen's retinue. He insisted each blade hammered by common apprentices so their scratches and unsteady fullers told story of young realm finding craft. When Cresswell fretted over imperfections, Gendry replied, Perfect swords hang above mantles. Imperfect ones save lives. The night before departure, Gendry ventured to the highest platform of the King's Gate Tower where a small anvil stood beneath star-swept vault. He often came here in solitude, forging tiny tokens, nails, clasps, arrowheads, throwing them into darkness as offerings to the city that birthed him twice. This night he carried only the ring Robert had once pressed into his palm. The iron circlet was nicked, crown points dulled by years of hammer blow and sweat. He held it over flame of a single lantern, watching heat coax new shimmer from old metal. Father, he whispered, uncertain if addressing Robert or the forgemaster at who knew which King's Landing shop who might truly hold claim to being father. Guide me through storms deeper than yours. He set the ring back on finger, winced at warmth, felt pulse beat against iron. Somewhere in sky a low roar echoed. Thunder or dragon's distant call, he could not tell. Mark down. They rode at dawn, a procession of banners unseen since Robert's rebellion. Black-crowned stag flanked by golden rose, onion sigil of House Seaworth, burning heart of Stannis half obscured by cloak fold. 10 score knights, 2,000 foot, all under strict order to encamp beyond Storm's End's walls so the Queen's dragons might land unthreatened. Gendry and Margaery traveled at the column's heart upon Storm and a chestnut mare named Honeysilk. Snowflakes chased them until they left Blackwater watershed. Then salt air scoured sky clear. Storm's End rose as if carved from the earth's own marrow, cliffs frothing with surf. Its drum tower loomed, and Gendry felt boyhood 5 winters old return, hand on 2 large stallion. They crossed the causeway under portcullis teeth and clatter of hooves, banners snapping. The courtyard smelled of wet stone and pine pitch. Old retainers bowed. Some pressed fingers to blacksmith aprons, remembering the prince who once quenched crude stag heads in their barrels. Gendry dismounted, set palm on tower wall rough with lichen. Home, he said. Margaery touched gloved fingertips to his. Ser Harbert Selmy still served as master-at-arms despite gray in beard. He embraced Gendry as one might oak grown stout. Your Grace, he said. The queen's chambers await, and the forge stands ready should your hammer itch. It will, Gendry replied, by dusk. He spent morning inspecting outer curtain, inner sea gate, wine cellars where vintners had laid casks 3 kings dead. He found the old rookery empty, ravens long relocated to capital, and resolved to restock, for in storm you need wings. At noon he visited the forge. Sparks greeted him like old mutts eager for master's return. He stripped to shirt, took up hammer, forged a simple chain link the length of finger joint, cooled it in seawater bucket, then hung it on peg with others, each link a moment of reflection upon power's burden. The strand now reached past his knee. When he emerged, arms smudged, he found Tommen waiting with Ser Barristan, excitement vying with nerves. "Will the dragons eat me?" Tommen asked. "Only if you taste of chicken," Gendry said, ruffling sandy curls. Tommen laughed, tension broken. That evening the watchfire crews lit great beacons atop the curtain walls, braziers of whale oil and lye, flares visible leagues out to sea. Wind carried sparks into ink sky. The feast hall filled with scent of saffron fish stew, rosemary lamb, apple tarts. Musicians rehearsed ballads of Garth and Durin Godgrief. Gendry tasted each dish himself, not for poison, that was Kevin's worry, but for salt, spice balance, warmth. "Food is first Parley," he told cooks. Past midnight he climbed Drum Tower alone. Waves pounded bass, thunderous enough to shudder stone. He could almost hear Lyseni siege drums of storms past. Lightning flashed far out, illuminating horizon. A shape like cliff bank but moving. He squinted. Then another flash revealed great wings beating above waves, slit pupil eyes reflecting lightning. A second shape followed, smaller, serpentine. He exhaled, dragons. They approached not in sunlight glory but night tempest. Fire hidden, thunder their herald. He descended at once. Horns sounded. Inner yard torches ignited. Soldiers lined parapets. Helms lowered in guarded awe. Dragons circled once, massive shadows against cloud, then banked inland to grassy field beyond East Wall where Gendry had cleared tents. Their landing sent tremors into bedrock. Landing craft touched shore minutes later. Slender boats rowed by unsullied in leather and mail. Gendry walked from gatehouse flanked by Ser Barristan and Stannis. He wore no crown, only forge-black breastplate and stag ring. At the foot of a low dune he halted. Torchlight wavered as figures approached. First came Ser Jorah Mormont, cloak hashed by sea spray. Next Grey Worm, helmed, spear grounded. Then a woman stepped forward and the night bowed around her. Daenerys Stormborn wore riding leathers dyed ash blue. A cloak of pale cream scaled like dawn frost. Silver gold braided hair hung to waist. Upon her shoulder perched a dragonet, new hatched, no bigger than hound, black as smoke with red frills. Behind, Drogon towered over tents, eyes twin ember planets. Regal perched on ruined catapult platform, tail curling lazily. Gendry advanced 3 paces, stopped. Daenerys studied him with violet eyes that seemed cut from amethyst. Rain began, fine needles glinting orange in torchlight. "You are the Hammer King," she said. Her voice carried the steppe and the slave pit and the ashes of Karth. "And you the Dragon Queen." He inclined head, not bowing but acknowledging forge equal. "I come to judge if ice or iron will clothe this realm," she said. "Ice claims none when iron stands," he answered. They stood, breaths drifting white, as though winter tested them. Finally she extended a gloved hand. "Then let us build furnace together." Their palms met, callus to callus, smith to smelter. Thunder cracked, and in that bright instant both saw silhouette of the other framed by electric fire. 2 children of storms, born amid lie and exile, now forging moment that might unmake world. Mark down. Negotiations began before dawn in Storm's End's stone-ribbed hall, only a ring of torches for warmth. Gendry on one side with Stannis, Marjorie, Kevin, Davos freshly beached and weary. Daenerys opposite with Tyrion Lannister. Shock of meeting his uncle across war table. Missandei, Varys unexpected from shadows, Grey Worm Grim Sentinel. They argued claim, Baratheon by Robert's conquest and writ of succession, Targaryen by blood and birthright. They argued need, undead pressing, realm fractured, small folk starving. They argued vengeance, Elaya's children, Lyanna's blood, dragons slain by lions. Words rang like crossed swords until sunrise bled through arrow slits. It was Tyrion who conjured compromise, voice dry as Dornish parchment. A dual throne reminiscent of ancient Valyrian triarchies, hammer and dragon, comonarchs or regents for child united. Stannis sneered, Marjorie raised brow. Daenerys considered, pride battling pragmatism. Gendry asked, how does divided forge strike true? They tabled dual rule for later, shifted to immediate enemy. Jon Snow arrived second day. Ravens had flown ahead, but seeing him stride into hall, cloak crusted with journey frost, made threat tangible. Ghost padded beside, fur spiked with salt. Southern soldiers shrank from pale red eyes. Jon greeted Gendry with clasp of forearms. They had once raced against leathers at Dragonstone's shore. Arya smirked from balcony, unseen by most. Jon spoke of hard home, of skeletal giants, of children turned to ice fiends. He unrolled rag-wrapped hand with carved spiral mark. Gift from other champion. It glowed faint blue as it neared torch. Murmurs rippled. Melisandre approached, lips shaping prayer. Daenerys set palm on table, knuckles whitened. Ice falls first on the north, Jon said. But all boundaries burn when winter truly wakes. Gendry rose, paced to hearth where fires cast hammerlight on his face. Then we strike before it wakes fully. He laid plan. Joint expedition to Eastwatch by the sea. Gather coastal wildling scouts for early warning. Sail Dragonglass Arsenal north on fast longships escorted by Regal overhead. Drogon guarding walls shadow tower gap where cracks had widened. Snow's men prepare beacon towers. Baratheon rose banners supply grain. Dragons strafe white hordes with flame. Hammer armies reinforce choke points. You assume wall holds, Tyrion noted. What if it fails? Then we fight on fields of grief, Gendry answered. But we fight together. He looked at Daenerys. Dragonfire alone cannot stem an ocean of death. But dragonfire tempered by iron might carve channel for life to flow. Silence wrapped room. Daenerys stepped forward. She removed a leather pouch from belt, poured black glass shards onto table. Dragonglass mined on Dragonstone months before. Your forge, my flame, she said, pushing shards to Gendry. Shape them into spears of dawn. A whisper of awe passed. Gendry reached out, touched vitreous black edges. Cold, smooth, potent. He nodded once. Alliance sealed not by pen or crown but by raw material of hope. Markdown. Preparations consumed fortnight. Unsullied drilled beside Stormlander levies. Greyjoy longships newly sworn to Queen's cause anchored in bay. Dragonglass smitheries blazed day and night. Gendry taught Dothraki Iraq's new fittings. Blood riders fascinated by metal that could shatter ice demons. Marjorie organized healers, septas, red priests, magi into triage companies. Kevin orchestrated supply carts along Rose Star-branded routes. Each stop a makeshift bakery distributing coarse bread and onion soup to refugees flooding south from Riverland skirmishes with undead scouts. One dawn Arya found Gendry at anvil shaping wolfhead dagger guards from silver steel. Sweat streamed down his temples, eyes narrowed against glare. She leaned against archway, arms folded. You swing finer now, she said.
FATE Charpent Technique.
He quenched a guard, water hissing. You still dance with death? I dance. Death tries to follow. She produced spool of direwolf-stamped waxed linen. Need grips wrapped. He grinned. Always. They worked in comfortable hush, wrapping hilts, testing balance. At length Arya said, I once thought I was too jagged for courts. Maybe still. But if you need blade and shadow, you know where to tap. Gendry bound last knot. Shadow and forge shape same blade. She touched his forearm. Dry callus meeting lean sinew. Then vanished with a smirk and the completed dagger. That night Marjorie found him alone in smithy, shirt discarded, hammering final spearhead luminous orange. She watched, pulse racing each time spark lit his jawline. When he plunged metal into oil and withdrew it steaming, she approached, slid arms around soot-slick waist. "Every girl dreams of night forging her future," she whispered. "I never knew the dream could smell of smoke and salt." He turned, resting forehead to hers. "The future smells of sweat before blossoms." Their kiss tasted of steel dust. When they parted, the spearhead lay cooling, edge dark, heart glowing. Markdown. The fleet departed on calm morning heavy with gull cry. Black sails of Stormlanders mingled with midnight canvas bearing three-headed dragon. Norvashi rowers chanted counterpoint to Dothraki warhorn. Drogon swept overhead, wing beats stirring breakers, while regal spiraled sky Viridian speck. Jon Snow commanded northern longship Frostmaiden, its sail patched with stark direwolf. Davos captained Black Betha anew. Gendry rowed aboard flagship Stormfire with Marjorie and Tyrion. As coast fell away, crew whispered of Sisterton overrun by whites, of Skagos sending smoke signals unseen in 2 centuries. Fog swallowed masts. On third night lightning played across pure white clouds without sound. Varys kept to cabin, quill dancing, little birds on each deck ferrying word of morale. Tyrion drank citrus rum sparingly, eyes never leaving horizon. Mid-voyage they encountered pack ice, jagged towers adrift between Barrow Isle and Skane, unheard of this far south. Ships steered narrow channels. Rime formed on rigging. Gendry ordered every sailor leather-gloved to avoid frostbite. Dothraki stared wide-eyed at floating cold mountains. One touched ice, recoiled as if scalded. Near dusk a horn from prow. Dark shapes ahead, not bergs. Wrecks, half-submerged, sails shredded, hulls coated in ice. Some bore knights watch black, others free folk glyphs. Jon's longship pulled alongside carcass of Caravel. He and Gendry boarded, torches aloft. Deck strewn with frozen corpses, wildlings in furs, black brothers in ragged cloaks. No wounds save frost. Jon knelt by a watchman's corpse, skin paper blue, eyes pale opal. "No sign of white reanimation," he muttered. Gendry scanned rails. Frost thick but scraped in places as if claws had gouged. They were drained of warmth. Wind moaned through shattered mast like distant scream. He stepped toward hold hatch. Inside, dark water lapped ankle-deep. Rat-gnawed barrels floated. He lowered torch, flame reflecting sudden shape. Child's corpse bobbing, limbs locked across wooden carving. Eyes snapped open, color shimmering icy. It screamed a noise like tearing silk. More shapes stirred. "Back!" Gendry roared. Jon slammed hatch, but first white child burst through, throwing both men off balance. Steel clashed. Gendry swung torch. Flame engulfed small body in roaring hiss. Yet still it clawed until hammer crushed skull into fragments. Jon hacked another with Valyrian steel, body shriveled, collapsed. They bolted deck. Regal's shadow fell. Dragonfire cascaded as they leapt rail to rope ladder. Ship erupted in conflagration, ice sizzling to steam. From Stormfire's deck, Tyrion watched plume of black smoke ascend. "Proof enough," he muttered. Varys whispered prayer unheard since Free City's childhood. Sailors crossed chests. Gendry, soaked and shivering, reported to Daenerys. She listened, jaw tight, gaze drifting to young dragon perched masttop, scales gleaming ember. "Even children," she said, voice raw. He answered only with nod. Orders were given. From now on each crew rotated fire watch, decks salted, crossbows tipped with dragonglass arrows. Markdown. Eastwatch appeared days later. A specter of pale stone crouching where the wall met ghost green sea. The fleet beached under rampart over shadow. Dragons perching atop keystone towers sending watchmen scrambling. Gendry disembarked first, hammer slung, cloak snapping. A gaunt man in raven feather cloak greeted them, face scarred. "Lord Commander Tormund Giant's Bane," he said, red beard matted. He clasped Jon in crushing hug, eyed dragons warily. Big crows brought strange friends. Wildling and watch alike guided royal party along wall's base. The ancient ice glimmered sickly blue under weak sun. Jon led them through tunnel where black iron gate hung open, bars iced. Inside courtyard tents lined in rows. Fires burned day and night, scent of seal fat and bitter herb stew. Children with sunken eyes clutched antler-bone charms carved by free folk mothers. Men sharpened axes of sea rock. Gendry convened council in Old Mess Hall. Jon, Tormund, Val Chieftain's widow, Maester Aemon's successor Maester Willem, Grey Worm, Davos, Tyrion recording, Daenerys silent sentinel. They mapped last sightings. White forces gathered at shivering seashore, building trestle rafts of driftwood, pushing them onto icy water as if to cross by boat. This seemed folly, but whites needed not breath. They could march seabed. The council realized enemy might flank Eastwatch ending behind the wall. "We must patrol coast," Gendry said. "Torch any rafts." Daenerys offered dragons, but Jon urged caution. Reserve them for true clash or risk exhaustion. They settled on mixed sorties. Dothraki horse archers along coast, knights watched skiffs scouting shallows, unsullied spear lines ready inland. That night snow thickened. Gendry walked wall top next to Daenerys. Wind howled, whipping cloaks. Far out, horizon glowed faint aurora jade. He said, "Green dances of sky seldom seen this south." "Dragons danced once," she replied. "Now sky claims color." She hugged arms to chest. "Do you miss hammer when holding crown?" "Aye, wear hammer within veins," he said. "Crown is lighter compared to loss if we fail." He paused. "Do you still dream of Iron Throne?" "I dream of children safe to play," she whispered, breath frost. "Throne is means, not end. But how to surrender dream forged by blood?" He considered. "Forge new dream, metal rewelds when heated." She smiled faintly, turned gaze northward. At dawn horns blared 3 blasts. Whites, the camp erupted. Gendry vaulted ramparts, hammer raised. Across tundra a tide of figures advanced. Silhouettes ragged, eyes blue pinpricks. At their center strode towering White Walker astride undead elk, spear of crystalline ice. Dothraki charged left flank. A rocks blazing under pitch-soaked cloth set alight. Unsullied formed shield wall with dragonglass-dipped spears. Jon led knights watch archers on wall turret, arrows whistling. Gendry met first White, skeletal fishermen swinging rusted anchor. Hammer crushed collarbone. Shards flew. He pivoted, bisected rancid sailor with downward arc Marjorie directed triage rear lines. Fresh linen stained red within breaths. Tyrion screamed orders to ballista crews firing obsidian bolts. Above, Drogon roared, unleashing torrent of fire that carved burning swath through ranks. Snow vaporized, steam columns soared. The White Walker raised spear, conjured curtain of cold that quenched flame midair. Scales on Drogon's chest iced instantly. Beast faltered, wings stiff. Daenerys clutched saddle, spurred. Regal dived, tackling brother free of freezing breath. Gendry saw ice spear aimed at Daenerys, White Walker drawing arm. He charged, hammer spinning one-handed, leapt over White Husk, hurled the weapon end over end. It struck elk haunch, splintering bone. Beast collapsed. Walker tumbled, spear skittering. Hammer clanged in snow, handle smoking with cold. Gendry sprinted, snatched dragonglass dagger from fallen unsullied, plunged into Walker's chest before it could rise. The thing shrieked, body fracturing like glass under hammer. Shards blew outward, slicing whites nearby which crumpled inert. Silence rippled across battlefield as though tide sucked breath. Jon's voice rose. "They fall with their master." Troops redoubled assault, targeting lesser walkers. Dragons resumed flaming lines, now unimpeded. Within hour the undead force shattered, leaving re-dead husks burning in rows. But victory cost. 50 unsullied lay lifeless. Dothraki lost twice that. Wildling women wailed over kin cut down. Drogon's left wing bore lattice of frost cracks. Gendry retrieved hammer from bloody snow, knelt by fallen watch ranger he had once taught forging nails in King's Landing shelters. He closed man's eyes with soot-stained fingers. Night deepened. Survivors stacked corpses, soaked in oil, lit pyres. Flames danced against ice wall, reflections resembling whites still moving. Gendry stood before blaze, clothes stiff with frozen blood. Daenerys approached, expression torn between triumph and grief. "You saved me," she said, voice low. "I saved the realm's forge fire," he replied. "Without its heat, iron freezes." She touched his forearm, lingered. "You fight like hammer, speak like poet." He shrugged. "Poets are smiths of words." They watched flames leap higher, sparks soaring into endless night like prayers to far gods. Wind smelled of pine, smoke, and distant sea. Markdown. A raven from Maester Willem to Old Town described the battle. The message reached Citadel archmasters locked in ivory tower debates about weather omens. One elderly scholar recorded in red ink, "The Hammer King's stand." Scribes would later debate if this marked first true turning of Long Night. Yet for now the war only shifted. Scouts reported larger army massing at Frozen Bay far east. Giants of ice, spiders big as hounds. Eastwatch's gates needed reinforcement. Walls' magic flickered each dusk. Gendry convened war council inside Castle's stone granary, converted to strategy room heated by braziers. There they plotted next step. Take fight beyond wall before host reached unstoppable swell, hairy supply of corpses, lure walkers into open for dragons. Arguments flared. Tyrion urged caution. Winter storms could ground dragons. Northmen might starve. Tormund wanted to raid with wildling flankers, keep mobility. Stannis insisted massed infantry lines supported by scorpions. Grey Worm spoke of shield formations to protect fire throwers. Marjorie researched herbal poultices to slow freezing wounds. Jon listened, weighed each, looked to Gendry. The Hammer King's decision. Split forces into 3 prongs, dragon airstrike, mobile wildling flanks, central infantry wedge under unsullied discipline. He would lead wedge, Jon Wildfill flank, Daenerys above. Supplies light, speed key. They would march by new moon. In following days, Gendry oversaw forging of portable braziers fueled by whale oil, warming stones for wounded. He personally drilled groups of mixed Northmen and Stormlanders to hold phalanx around pyre units. At night, he wrote letters to Marjorie. She remained at Eastwatch to supervise field hospitals, telling of sky shimmering crimson with Dragonfire test flights, of Frostfang peaks glowing like embers beneath Aurora, of ghosts of ancient kings he imagined among ruins. Her replies carried pressed winter rose petals, scent faint but grounding. One evening Arya joined him on Rampart. She tossed small coin. "Bravosi good luck charm," she said. "Luck heats metal?" he teased. "Luck knows which blade strikes." She eyed his hammer. "About time you named that thing." He chuckled. "Names give weapons temper or temptation. Then call it Stormheart. For yours." She winked, vanished like breath fog. He considered, traced callous thumb along hammer's wolf-bit dent from Skane Whitechild. Stormheart indeed. Markdown. The march began under sled-heavy sky. Columns snaked beyond walls' eastern shadows, torches bobbing like ants of flame. Dragons roared overhead, banking through sleet. Gendry trudged at vanguard, hammer resting across broad shoulders. Frost-crusted beard, breath plumed. He felt weight of countless souls behind him. Smith's forging realm, children waiting for spring that might never come. They crossed white plain etched with frozen rivers that glowed faint blue, past petrified trees carved by ancient children with runes so weathered none could read. At each rune Jon bowed head. Gendry followed suit though runes meant nothing to him. Respect, like fire, warmed even unlettered. 2 days in, scouts returned breathless. White Horde 30,000 strong marching west at canyon called Icemorn Rift, led by quartet of walkers astride dead mammoths. Dragons dived, but storm clouds thickened. Hail pelted wings. Daenerys signaled abort. Gendry ordered infantry to shield circle, wildling flankers to hairy edges. Battle erupted. Hammer cracked skulls. Shield walls held against tidal dead pressing from 3 sides. Wildlings lit oil pots, lobbed over heads. Flames whooshed green where wildfire jars stolen from King's Landing stores burst. Walkers pushed mammoths through blaze. Two beasts crashed into infantry line, ice tusks goring. Gendry faced one mammoth, leapt aside of trunk swipe, swung hammer into knee joint. Ice shattered. Creature collapsed. Walker swung jagged blade. Gendry caught blow on hammer shaft, kicked, stabbed dragonglass dagger into blue chest. Light exploded as Walker fell. White's near collapsed. But second mammoth broke circle. A row of spearwives died. Line faltered. Jon signaled regal. Dragon descended. Spewed torrent of emerald flame Daenerys had fed with pine resin. Mammoth melted to slush. Yet sudden gust extinguished swath of fire. An unseen javelin of ice hurtled upward, striking Regal's shoulder. Dragon screeched, veered, but stayed aloft. Gendry's heart twisted. Memories of father's rage at fields of trident flashed, replaced by resolve. Sunless hours stretched. Battle lines shifted like dunes. At last dawn pale as old bone crept. Whites still came but slower. Walkers dwindled to shards. Gendry's arms bled, bruised. Stormheart's head dented. He rallied men by striking hammer to shield thrice. Survivors answered with clanging echo. Final push shattered remnants. Snowfield littered with motionless corpses merging into drifts. Casualties heavy. Unsullied lost a third, Dothraki half. Jon's wildlings dwindling, yet they lived. Fires burned stacked whites. Smoke spiraled. Daenerys dismounted near Gendry, face streaked with soot and sorrow. Dragons tire, she said. Smiths too, he answered. But forge still burns. He grasped her soot-smudged hand. Vows unspoken bound them stronger than treaties. On third night after battle, scouts reported the night King himself seen far east at Frostwater, raising new dead from ancient barrow fields. Dragons needed rest. Armies bled. Jon suggested falling back to Wall, but Melisandre arrived in camp, eyes like live cinders, declaring Lord of Light ordained final confrontation at frozen lake called Mirror of Moons in 5 days. Lunar eclipse. Stannis stiffened, skepticism fighting residual faith. Gendry asked, "Why there?" "Because there the veil is thinnest. Fire and ice meet sky," she said. "Only there can Night King be unmade." Her gaze bore into his. King's blood must flow to quench winter. Gendry set grip on hammer. Many kings' bloods here, and I alone choose whose flows. She smiled sadly. Forge demands sacrifice. That night he sat outside medical yurt where Marjorie tended frostbite victims, her hands gentle yet firm. He watched steam curl from cauldrons, heard low moans. He wondered how many more sacrifices this realm craved. He thought of ring-warming finger, chain of links at Storm's End workshops still waiting final length. He rose and walked into snow until campfire lights vanished. Above, sky clear, stars fierce. He knelt, pressed palm to frozen earth. "If blood must answer," he whispered to gods unknown, "let it be mine, but let my people live." No god spoke, yet northern breeze seemed to soften, as though acknowledging offer. He stood, shouldered hammer, returned to camp where dawn glow hinted behind jagged peaks. 5 days to Mirror of Moons. 5 days to forge destiny in ice and flame. The Hammer King tightened strap of breastplate, feeling heartbeat steady, not with fear but rhythm of anvil blow. Strong, unyielding, ready. And somewhere in that rhythm, the realm itself breathed. One last breath before plunge into furnace where either steel would emerge bright and unbroken, or shatter forever.